The Galactic Coalition had thousands of laws. Some were about trade. Some were about borders. Some were about war. Every species that joined the coalition had to study these laws for many cycles. But there was one rule that was always repeated. It was spoken slowly. Clearly, do not interfere with humans. No one explained it in detail. No one told long stories about it. The words were simple. The tone was serious. Humans were listed in the coalition database as a developing species. They were young compared to most others. Their technology was strong, but not the strongest. Their fleets were modern, but not the largest. Their psychological profile said they were emotionally volatile. It said they could be angry. It said they could be compassionate. It said they made decisions based on feeling as much as logic. Another line described them as strategically unpredictable. And then, at the bottom of the report, one strange phrase always appeared: officially non-threatening. Young officers often laugh at that line. If they were non-threatening, why was there a special rule about them? The archives held more questions. Deep inside coalition data vaults were sealed war simulations about humanity. Access required the highest clearance. Most leaders never saw them. Those who did rarely spoke about what they found. Entire star systems avoided human territory. Trade ships travel around Earth space instead of through it. Military patrol routes curved away from human colonies. No one said why. They just followed the map. It had been this way for almost 300 standard years. Then the Veiltari dominion rose. The Veiltari were young compared to the ancient core species, but they were powerful. Their fleets were fast. Their soldiers were disciplined. Their leaders were ambitious. They expanded quickly. They conquered 3 small empires in less than a decade. Their banner spread across new systems. Their confidence grew. Many of their commanders were young. They believed in strength. They believed fear was the best tool in the universe. When they joined the Galactic Coalition as a recognized power, they were given the same orientation every species received. They listened to the long list of laws. They nodded politely. And then they heard the rule: do not interfere with humans. A silence filled the chamber. One Veiltari commander tilted his head. Why? The coalition representative did not change expression. It is a standing rule. Have they defeated you before? The commander asked. No. Have they conquered systems? No. Are they more advanced than us? No. The Veiltari exchanged quiet signals between themselves. The representative added one final sentence. The simulations are sealed for a reason. That only made the Veiltari more curious. Back in their own space, the young commanders spoke freely. They called the rule superstition. They said older species were afraid of ghosts from the past. They said humanity was protected by myth, not power. They studied human space carefully. They saw peaceful trade routes. They saw cultural broadcasts. They saw humans arguing in their own media channels. They saw political debates and open elections. This is the species the galaxy fears. One commander said, they are divided. Another said, emotional, soft. They focused on one detail. Humans had many diplomats traveling across the galaxy. They believed in discussion, in treaties, in negotiation. That is weakness, the youngest commander said. The Dominion Council did not officially approve any action, but they did not forbid it either. The plan was simple. They would test the rule, not with war, not with invasion, with pressure. A human diplomat named Elias Ward was traveling through neutral space on a standard mission. His ship was small, lightly escorted, clearly marked as diplomatic. The Veiltari intercepted it. They disabled the engines with a clean pulse. No damage, no debris, no public violence. Then they boarded. Elias Ward did not resist. He stood calmly as armored Veiltari soldiers surrounded him. His expression did not show fear. It did not show anger. Under Dominion authority, the commander said, "You are being detained for questioning." Ward only asked one question. "Has your council proved this?" The commander did not answer. The human was taken. The ship was left drifting but intact. A message was sent to Earth. Formal, Cold, the Veil Tari Dominion is holding your diplomat for investigation. They expected outrage. They expected threats. They expected fleets to move. Instead, something else happened. Human channels went quiet. Embassies across coalition space closed without ceremony. Human ambassadors canceled meetings. Trade ships changed course. Military vessels did not mobilize. They simply vanished from public tracking routes. The news spread fast. A human diplomat had been taken. The rule had been broken. In coalition chambers, older species grew uneasy. Some began pulling their own fleets closer to home. Others strengthened cyber defenses without announcing why. No one wanted to be near the center of what might come next. The Veil Tari waited for anger. They received silence. Not weak silence. Heavy silence. In hidden observation stations, analysts watched human networks shift into encrypted patterns never seen before. Data traffic rerouted. Economic algorithms adjusted. Quiet messages moved through channels too complex to follow. No public threats were made. No speeches were broadcast. Earth only sent one simple acknowledgement. We are aware. That was all. In the detention chamber aboard a Dominion flagship, Elias Ward sat calmly. He observed the surroundings with careful eyes. He asked for water. He asked for a communication window. He did not beg. He did not shout. One young Veil Tari officer studied him through the barrier. "Why are you not afraid?" the officer asked. Ward gave a small smile. "I am," he said softly. "But fear is not the problem." "What is the problem?" the officer asked. Ward looked directly at him. "You broke the only rule." Across the galaxy, systems dimmed their lights slightly. Trade slowed. Patrol routes shifted. Ancient species remembered old records they wished they could forget. The galaxy did not speak. It waited, and it held its breath. The Veil Tari Dominion waited for anger. They waited for a human fleet to appear at their borders. They waited for loud speeches. They waited for threats filled with pride and fury. None came. No war declaration was sent. No emergency session was called in the Galactic Coalition. No human admiral appeared on public screens promising revenge. The stars remained quiet. At first, the Veil Tari commanders were pleased. "You see," the youngest commander said, "the rule was only fear." Their flagship drifted calmly through its patrol route. The captured diplomat remained in secure quarters. Dominion news networks reported that the situation was under control. But across the galaxy, something small began to change. Human embassies started to close. There were no dramatic exits, no shouting, no accusations. Human ambassadors simply informed host governments that they were returning home for review. Office lights went dark. Flags were lowered. Doors were sealed. Trade routes shifted next. Cargo ships that once moved through shared space adjusted their paths. Some returned to human territory. Others stopped entirely. Automated trade hubs received quiet notices of suspension. Again, no anger, no explanation, just absence. In the Dominion's Economic Command Center, analysts noticed the first numbers. Minor fluctuation in resource flow, one officer reported. Temporary. Another said, "We will replace the routes." But replacing human trade was not simple. Human-supplied rare components used in advanced starship navigation systems. They provided complex software used in interstellar finance tracking. They sold medical nanotech that many species depended on. Small shortages began. Still, the Veil Tari laughed. "Let them sulk," one commander said. "They will return in negotiations." Then the human communication networks shifted. Across the galaxy, long-used public encryption standards were abandoned. Human data traffic moved into new patterns. Old access points stopped responding. Monitoring stations lost visibility. It was not an attack. It was a curtain. Human military satellites also repositioned. They did not move toward Veil Tari space. They simply changed orbit. Some drifted deeper into human territory. Others aligned in quiet formations along trade corridors. To outside observers, it looked like routine maintenance. But it happened all at once. In Dominion strategy chambers, predictive AI systems processed the new data. The models ran simulations. The results came back unclear. Probability chains returned unstable outcomes. Economic projections showed spreading disruption patterns. Military forecasts showed no direct attack, but rising instability across Dominion borders. Recalculate. The chief strategist ordered. The AI recalculated. The anomalies grew worse. Meanwhile, something stranger happened. Neutral species began adjusting their positions. A mining alliance near Vale Tari territory suddenly announced a maintenance shutdown. A shipping consortium delayed contracts with Dominion buyers. A banking guild increased transaction scrutiny on Dominion accounts. None of them declared support for Earth. None of them criticized the Dominion. They simply became cautious. The coalition chamber grew tense. Older species whispered among themselves. They had seen this pattern before, though many had hoped never to see it again. On Earth, there were still no public speeches. The human government issued only short, calm updates. Our citizen will be returned. No deadline, no threat, just certainty. Inside Dominion space, daily life continued. Markets opened. Fleets trained. Citizens followed official broadcasts assuring them that the situation was stable. But behind the scenes, supply algorithms began isolating regions. Human economic systems, deeply connected to galactic trade, quietly adjusted risk protocols. Systems that interacted heavily with Dominion space were flagged. Insurance rates shifted. Access permissions narrowed. Entire sectors of commerce found themselves slowly disconnected from human infrastructure. It was not a blockade. It was a withdrawal of support. A Dominion logistics officer stared at a screen filled with cascading alerts. Why are outer colonies reporting processing delays? He asked. Human-based coordination software is no longer updating. An assistant replied. We are attempting manual override. Manual override was slower. Slower meant vulnerable. Vulnerable meant expensive. The Vale Tari commanders still believed control was in their hands. Until their predictive AI sent a new message. It flagged long-term instability across Dominion territory. Not from military threat, not from invasion, from internal stress. Supply chains thinning. Trade alliances weakening. Neighboring systems reducing cooperation. The AI could not identify a direct hostile action, but it identified a pattern. Strategic isolation. The youngest commander frowned at the data. They are not attacking, he said. No, the strategist replied quietly. They are stepping away. And that harms us. The strategist looked at the widening projection models. Red lines stretched across simulated decades. It harms everyone who depended on them. Reports came in from border systems. Smugglers sense opportunity. Minor pirate groups tested patrol strength. Fringe political movements inside Dominion space gained sudden access to anonymous data leaks about corruption in local leadership. None of it traced back to Earth. None of it could be proven. But the timing was exact. In the detention chamber, Elias Ward noticed increased guard rotations. Conversations outside his door sounded sharper. A young officer returned, the same one who had spoken to him before. Your people are doing nothing, the officer said. Ward met his gaze calmly. We're doing something. What? Waiting. For what? For you to understand. Back in the command chamber, the Dominion Council reviewed the latest intelligence summary. Human fleets had not mobilized. Human weapons had not fired. No hostile message had been broadcast. Yet the Dominion Stability Index had dropped by 7% in 3 standard cycles. 7% was not war, but it was not peace either. The youngest commander felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, uncertainty. The coalition chambers across the galaxy remained silent. No one intervened. No one offered comfort to the Dominion, because they all recognized the pattern. The Vale Tari had expected rage. They had prepared for battle. They had trained for explosions and lasers and dramatic retaliation. They were not prepared for silence. And slowly, carefully, the Dominion began to realize that something vast was moving around them. Not loud, not visible, but deliberate. They had broken the only rule, and now they were starting to understand why it existed. But they still did not understand what was coming. The coalition chamber was full, but no one spoke loudly. The Veiltari Dominion had requested clarification. They wanted records. They wanted proof that this rule was more than fear and old rumor. So the coalition opened a sealed archive. From the center platform stepped an old Ledhari archivist named Saran Val. His species had long memories. They measured time in centuries, not years. He looked at the Veiltari commanders with calm eyes. "You ask why the rule exists," he said. "You believe it is based on myth." The youngest Veiltari commander lifted his chin. "We see no evidence of human conquest. No great war led by Earth." Saran Val nodded slowly. "That is correct." With a gesture, he activated a projection. Stars filled the chamber. A map of the galaxy from 300 standard years ago appeared. At the center of the map was an empire long gone, the Korthan hegemony. At its peak, it controlled hundreds of systems. Its fleets were massive. Its armies were precise. "And here," Saran said, pointing to a small blue region near the edge of the map, "was humanity. At that time, humans were weaker, fewer colonies, smaller fleets, less advanced technology. The Korthan believed humans were insignificant," Saran continued. "They desired human resource worlds. They believed it would be a simple expansion. The projection showed Korthan fleets entering human space. They struck quickly," Saran said. "They destroyed orbital stations. They seized mining colonies. They broadcast victory messages. The Veiltari watched closely. Did humans retaliate? One asked. Saran shook his head. Not immediately. The chamber grew quiet. They did not rush to battle. They did not scream threats into the void. They did not gather their fleets for glorious revenge. "What did they do?" the youngest commander asked. "They studied." The projection shifted. Human data streams appeared across the map. Trade patterns, communication signals, diplomatic exchanges. "They mapped the hegemony," Saran said. "Not its borders, its systems." He highlighted supply routes, fuel depots, political alliances, banking hubs, communication relays. Humans identified every weakness that did not look like a weakness. They observed how the hegemony depended on distant mining systems for rare elements. They tracked how its outer colonies relied on central food distribution. They studied the rivalries between Korthan nobles. "And they waited," Saran said softly. "For how long?" asked a Veiltari strategist. 7 standard years. Shock rippled through the chamber. 7 years, the young commander said. "They endured occupation for 7 years." "Yes," Saran replied. "They rebuilt quietly behind their lines. They improved encryption. They strengthened alliances with neutral species. They invested in industries the hegemony did not notice." The projection shifted again. Small changes appeared first. Minor trade disruptions, communication delays, unexplained shortages. "The humans did not launch a grand attack," Saran said. "They made adjustments." Banking systems connected to Korthan accounts began flagging irregularities. Insurance rates for hegemony trade increased. Fuel shipments were delayed due to unexpected maintenance. Then came political fractures. Data leaks exposed corruption among Korthan governors. Rival houses turned on one another. Accusations spread. The Veiltari commanders leaned forward. "Did humans claim responsibility?" one asked. "No," Saran said. "Military supply chains began to fail. Replacement parts did not arrive on time. Navigation software malfunctioned. Shipyards faced sudden material shortages. The hegemony increased patrols. They searched for enemy fleets. They found none. They prepared for war," Saran said. "But the war they prepared for never came. Instead, their economy slowed. Their alliances weakened. Their citizens lost trust in leadership. Outer systems began declaring independence. The projection showed systems turning gray, then separate from the empire. In less than 3 years after the first disruption," Saran said, "the Korthan hegemony dissolved. No final battle, The youngest Veiltari asked. Saran shook his head again. No great confrontation. No fleet clash that history students could celebrate. The hegemony collapsed under its own weight. Its leaders blamed internal corruption. They blamed weak discipline. They blamed bad luck. They never proved human involvement. But it was humans, the strategist pressed. Saran met his gaze. Yes. Silence filled the chamber. They did not conquer, Saran continued. They did not occupy Korthan worlds. They did not enslave their people. When the hegemony fell, humans restored their captured colonies and withdrew. Why? The Veiltari commander demanded. Why not claim the empire? Because they did not want it, Saran said. They wanted security, not domination. The projection faded. That is why the rule exists, Saran said quietly. Not because humans are violent. They are not the most powerful military force in the galaxy. He paused. They are the most patient. He looked directly at the Veiltari delegation. When harmed, they do not react with pride. They react with calculation. The chamber felt colder. They will endure loss, Saran said. They will absorb insult. They will appear divided, emotional, weak. He let the words hang. And then, when the time is correct, they will adjust the universe around their enemy. One Veiltari officer shifted uncomfortably. You speak as if it is happening again. Saran did not answer directly. He only said, You detain their diplomat. The Veiltari commanders exchanged glances. Our fleets are intact, the youngest insisted. Our borders are secure. Saran gave a small nod. So were the Korthan. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the session ended. No one applauded. No one argued. The rule had never been about fear of sudden destruction. It was about something far more unsettling. Humans did not need to win loudly. They only needed time. And the galaxy had learned 300 years ago that when humans are patient, entire empires begin to fall apart without ever seeing the weapon that struck them. At first, the problems looked small. A navigation grid in one outer Dominion system went offline for 3 minutes. Engineers blamed routine failure. They restored it quickly. Then a banking hub reported corrupted transaction logs. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was destroyed. The data was simply scrambled. It took days to repair. Next came communication delays between military relay stations. Messages arrived seconds late, then minutes late. Not enough to cause panic, just enough to create friction. The Veiltari High Command assured its citizens that everything was under control. But the interruptions did not stop. Energy distribution software began miscalculating supply routes. Cargo shipments arrived at the wrong docks. Automated repair facilities received outdated instructions. Every error was small. Each one alone meant little. Together, they formed a pattern. The Dominion cyber defense teams worked without rest. They searched for intrusion signals. They searched for viruses. They searched for any clear enemy signature. They found none. The systems were not attacked with force. They were nudged. Meanwhile, former trade partners began announcing temporary policy changes. A powerful mining consortium halted rare mineral exports to Dominion space, citing contractual reassessment. A shipping alliance increased tariffs specifically on Dominion vessels. A food distribution network suspended long-term supply agreements. No one accused the Dominion openly. They simply stepped back. Within weeks, the Dominion's import costs doubled. Strategic materials that once flowed easily now arrived slowly, if at all. Fuel reserves became the next concern. The Veiltari fleets were vast. They were proud of their warships. Their cruisers and carriers still patrol the borders with full weapon capacity. But fuel logistics began tightening. A refinery complex in a border system reported equipment failure. Replacement parts were delayed. A fuel convoy was rerouted due to insurance restrictions. Storage facilities received fewer shipments than projected. Again, no explosions. No dramatic sabotage. Just delay. Strategists began running long-term projections. If the trend continued, fleet readiness would drop by 15% within 6 cycles. Their ships were intact, but readiness was slipping. At the same time, something more dangerous emerged from inside. Anonymous data packages began appearing across Dominion networks. They revealed corruption among certain regional governors. They exposed hidden profit accounts. They displayed evidence of misused public funds. The leaks were precise. They did not target random officials. They targeted figures already unpopular. Citizens began questioning their leadership. Protests formed in industrial systems, not violent, but loud. Who will release this information? The Dominion Council demanded. Cyber investigators traced the origin. It came from internal archives. No external breach was detected. The data had always existed. It had simply been highlighted. The youngest Veiltari commander felt unease growing in his chest. Our fleets remain strong, he insisted in council session. Our borders are secure. Yes, the chief strategist replied quietly. But our foundation is not. Economic stress increased pressure on outer colonies. Political tension spread from system to system. Fuel shortages forced fleet units to reduce patrol frequency. Insurance rates for Dominion ships rose again. The Empire was not under attack. It was under strain. The difference was subtle, but terrifying. Across coalition space, other species watched carefully. None intervened. None offered assistance. They remembered the archives. They remembered what patience looked like. In the detention chamber, Elias Ward noticed the guards were more serious now. Their posture was tighter. Their voices were lower. When an officer finally asked him, "Is this your doing?" Ward answered calmly, "No." "Then what is happening?" Ward held his gaze. "You disrupted balance." "That is not an answer. It is the only one you need." Back in Dominion Command, the predictive AI produced its clearest forecast yet. If current isolation patterns continue for another 12 cycles, the Dominion would face economic contraction, increase internal instability, and reduce strategic influence across the region. No single event would destroy them, but the slow pressure would reshape them. The council chamber grew silent. Then a transmission arrived. It was simple, short, direct, from Earth. The Dominion leaders gathered as the message played on the central screen. There was no dramatic music, no fleet displayed behind the speaker, only a human representative seated at a plain desk. His voice was calm. "Return our citizen. Restore balance. This ends." That was all. No threats, no anger, no raised voice, just certainty. The transmission ended. The chamber felt heavier than before. The youngest commander finally understood something he had not considered when he first mocked the rule. Humans had not reacted with emotion. They had not lashed out. They had not tried to prove strength through force. They had adjusted the system. Every trade flow, every alliance, every economic lever that touched Dominion space had shifted, not violently, deliberately. The Dominion fleets were still powerful. Their weapons were still charged. Their soldiers were still disciplined. But an empire does not survive on ships alone. It survives on trust, on supply, on cooperation, on stability. And all those were thinning. The council did not argue long. They knew now that this was not a contest of pride. It was a lesson. They had believed retaliation would be loud and explosive. They had prepared for anger. Instead, they were facing calculation, systemic, precise, patient. They had broken the rule. And now they finally understood why it had existed for 300 years. Human retaliation was not emotional. It was structural. And structures, once weakened, do not collapse with noise. They simply stop holding weight. The Veiltari Dominion did not collapse, but it came very close. Their outer trade system slowed almost to a stop. Internal disputes grew louder. Resource shortages forced difficult choices. None of it looked like war. There were no burning worlds, no massive fleet battles, just pressure, quiet, steady, unavoidable pressure. After several cycles of worsening instability, the Dominion Council gathered an emergency session. Their predictive AI showed long-term decline if current conditions continued, not destruction, but slow weakening.